Hello, good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to EuroCham Cambodia, and good morning to all of our audience who are joining from Europe. In case that you cannot hear the presentation here or listen to the presentation, please drop a message in the chat box. So our team at the back will be able to help you. So thank you for registering to EuroCham's webinar series. So today we will be discussing on how the lockdown in Cambodia will impact the construction sectors. So joining with us this afternoon, we have Mr. Charles AMAR, the head of real estate practice group at the FDL, and also vice chairman of EuroCham Real Estate and Construction Committee. And also we have Mr. Michel CASSAGNES, managing director at Archetype Cambodia. He is also the current chairman of EuroCham Real Estate and Construction Committee. So Mr. Sharma will be giving his presentations on the preventive measures announced by the governments, and also on how it will be impacted the construction sectors. And later on, he will also discuss the measure that can be taken by the construction company. And after his presentation, Michel will rejoin him to answer to the audience questions. So before proceeding, may I please invite Mr. Denis, Executive Director of EuroCham Cambodia, to give his opening remarks. Thank you. Denis, I think you can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you, Ratanak. I'm very pleased to welcome the 163 today participants to our webinar on how the lockdown in Cambodia will impact. Sorry, I have technical things. To our today webinar on how the lockdown in Cambodia will impact the construction sectors. Obviously, the topic is particularly relevant as long as with government, agribusiness, and tourism, this sector has for a long time now been one of the main pillars of the Cambodia economy. Early this year, according to the Ministry of Economy and Finance macroeconomic report, the construction was projected to grow by almost 3% in 2021, after having experienced a contraction of 2.4% last year. The current evolution of the pandemic in Cambodia raised inevitably questions such as, will this January projection still stand? How does Cambodia economy recovery relate to the situation of its construction and real estate sectors? In this context, I want to express my deep gratitude to our today two speakers for having proposed this initiative. Mr. Charles AMAR, head of the real estate practice group at the FDL and vice chairman of EuroCham Real Estate and Construction Committee, and also Mr. Michel CASSAGNES, managing director of Archetype Cambodia and chairman of the EuroCham Real Estate and Construction Committee. Today, our two distinguished speakers will address several issues, notably the legal question that the current crisis and measures taken by the royal government raised for construction companies. I want also to take this opportunity to encourage the audience to join EuroCham for the ones who are not yet members. And for our members operating in the construction industry and which are not yet part of the real estate and construction committee, I want to invite you strongly to consider to join this very active committee led by Michel along with his two vice chairmen, Charles and Mr. Simon Van Cleef. In this perspective, for the members operating in this sector, you are most welcome to attend as a guest the next meeting of the Real Estate and Construction Committee, which is scheduled on 13th of May. Just contact us. Indeed, and it will be my final remark, we as EuroCham are and have been working hard together with our Real Estate and Construction Committee to contribute to this sector. Recently, Charles, our today's speakers, was elected as a representative to the National Asbestos Profile Working Group. Our committee is also working hard to partner up with the Cambodian Green Building Council. Together with the EU E-Ready expert, the committee has been working once again on the possible adoption by the Cambodia of the Eurocode. Our 2019 White Book contained more than 12 policy recommendations to the Royal Government of Cambodia, and we continue to actively engage with the Cambodian authorities on standards, but also on very practical issues. As a matter of example, we have been actively, through our committees, participating in the various consultative meetings on the draft land management and urban planning law. Actually, one of these meetings was just yesterday. This is to illustrate that real estate and construction are high on EuroCham agenda. For all those reasons, I am very pleased to invite our today's speakers to take the floor, starting by Charles, who has prepared a very comprehensive presentation with operational tips for all of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Denis. Thanks, Kekratanak, for this introduction. I will share my screen for my presentation. So thanks everyone for joining this webinar. The purpose of this webinar is to show how the lockdown in Cambodia will impact the Cambodian construction sectors. I would like first of all to highlight that I'm not a health specialist and I'm not also a data specialist. I am a lawyer specialized in real estate, construction and hospitality. And the purpose of this webinar is to give you some data information where we are in Cambodia relating to COVID infections, vaccination, also where we are relating to the situation in the region, and also what are the measures that has been taken by the royal government of Cambodia, and which measure can be taken by a construction company relating when they face a lockdown. So we see first of all the outbreak situation in Cambodia, then the preventative measures announced by the royal government of Cambodia, then how it impacts the construction sectors, and then which measure could be taken by the construction companies. Of course, this webinar is focused for construction companies, but some recourse can be used by other companies in other sectors. So, outbreak situation in Cambodia. So where we are as at 5 May 2021. In terms of cases, we have 16,971 cases. In terms of active cases, 10,835 deaths. Unfortunately, we have already reached 110 deaths linked to COVID and 6,019 recovery. Most of these cases are linked to the 20 February 2021 Phnom Penh community incidents. We can see that on the number of total cases, 16,416 are linked to this event. Indeed, before this event of 20 February, we do not have a lot of cases in Cambodia. The situation was quite normal, and we didn't face any deaths linked to COVID. Things has changed with this 20 February community event. And we have seen the last 4 days a significant increase in terms of infection, in terms of cases, 730 cases on 1st May, 841 on 2nd May, 938 cases on 3rd May, and yesterday 672. On 29 April, Cambodia has reported its highest number of recovery since the beginning of the pandemic, with 994 patients which were released from hospital. We can also estimate that we will have a lot of new recovery, considering the number of infection and considering the remaining active case that we have 10,835 cases. So most of them will be a recovery, and I hope it will be soon. When we are speaking about COVID cases, one data which is really interesting is the positivity rate. Maybe you have heard about it. It's when you divide the number of cases by the number of tests which is done. And over the last 7 days, we have a highest number of positivity rate, which is approximately 10%, 9.7%. But this can be explained by most of the tests are done in a red zone where we have a lot of infection. So of course, this increases the positivity rate. If you would do the test in a zone where you don't have a lot of COVID cases, like for example, if you go to Ratanakiri, at the moment, we don't have any cases in Ratanakiri, the positivity rate will be very low. So we have to be cautious when we are looking at data, because how you collect the data, it can take a different interpretation. In terms of infection, in terms of provinces, so all provinces have faced infection except 2, which is Ratanakiri and Odar Menche. In the top, of course, it's Phnom Penh with 10,895 cases, followed by Sihanoukville, Kendal, Benteng Meche, Svering, Takeo, and Preveng. And some provinces have very low cases, like for example, Mondulkiri with 3 cases, Battambang with only 2 cases, Paylin, Prévire, and Stengtreng with only 1 cases. In terms of vaccination, where we are. At 3rd May 2021, 1,465,985 people get a first shot, a first dose of a vaccine, which corresponds to approximately 9% of the population. It's very high if we compare to the other country in the region. At the same date in Thailand, we have only 1,100,000, which is a difference of approximately 400,000 with Cambodia. And if we compare in terms of population, it's approximately 2% of the population who have received the first shot in Thailand. It's also the same if we are looking to Vietnam, to Malaysia, to Laos, where we have always less than 2% of the population and less than 1 million of people who get a first shot of vaccine. So we can consider that a lot of effort has been made by the royal government of Cambodia, because at the moment we have approximately 9% of the population who has received the first vaccine. 3 vaccines are available in Cambodia. Most of you are aware of it. We have Sinovac and Sinopharm, which are Chinese vaccine, and we have Covishield, which is mostly called AstraZeneca, but it's a vaccine which is licensed by AstraZeneca, but produced in India. The vaccination is at the moment mostly focused in Phnom Penh and Kendal, and we expect that it will be completed for these 2 provinces and capital by end of June 2021. And at the moment, it's really focused in the red zone in order to limit the spread of the virus. Where is Cambodia in the region? In terms of COVID cases, we can see on this map, on this chart, sorry, that Indonesia and Malaysia have the highest number of infection, 1.6 million for Indonesia and 420,000 for Malaysia. which is much more than Cambodia, which is 16,971. This can be explained by they have also the size of their population, which is higher than Cambodia, but also by the fact that this country have faced COVID cases since the beginning of the pandemic, while in Cambodia, we didn't have a lot of cases at the beginning of the pandemic. During 1 year, we don't have a lot of cases. It was only on 20 February 2021 that really started to have a lot of infection in Cambodia. Singapore has 61,000 of cases, while Thailand has 74,900. So we have more cases in Thailand than in Singapore. It's also because at the moment we have much more cases in Thailand, where in Singapore the number of new cases is very low, it's 2 or 3 per day, which is very low. It's almost none cases in new cases in Singapore. In terms of recovery, of course, it's led by Indonesia and Malaysia because they have the highest number of infections. They will have, of course, the highest number of recovery. Singapore still have more recoveries than Thailand. Why? Because again, most of the cases in Singapore were old compared to Thailand, where most of the cases are new, and that's why it will take more time for Thailand to get more recovery. But at the end, because Thailand has more infections than Singapore, of course, it will have more recoveries than Singapore in the near future. And Vietnam and Laos don't have a lot of recovery because they didn't have a lot of cases. In terms of deaths, Indonesia has also the lead with 46,000 in terms of deaths, followed by Malaysia with 1,574, which is quite low compared to the number of infection. Singapore only 31 deaths, Thailand 318, and Cambodia 110. So Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand have the highest number of deaths. This can be explained also by the number of infections faced by this country, also the living condition, and also the quality of their healthcare system. What are the preventative measures announced by the royal governments? So we will list down all these measures. We will not go into detail, and I pick up only the main decisions that were taken by the governments. We see that a lot of regulations were issued by the government in order to manage and to limit the spread of the virus. So on 29 April 2020, the law on state of emergency. 4 March, Sihanouk province administration prohibited the entry and exit of people into and from Sihanoukville from these dates. 11 March, the law on measure to prevent the spread of COVID-19. 31st March, the royal government issued the sub-decree on COVID-19 prevention measures. 1st April, the Phnom Penh municipal imposed a 2-week curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. We'll see later that this has been reduced from tomorrow to 3 a.m. Decision 44 dated 6 April and decision 51 dated 17 April, pursuant to which the royal government prohibited the travel between provinces from 6 April. 10 April, the Phnom Penh municipality has announced a 14-day lockdown, only in some areas located in Phnom Penh. It was not a general lockdown at that date. On 13 April, Phnom Penh municipality has announced that it will extend the curfew for 2 additional weeks. Decision 49 dated 14 April, the government decided that Phnom Penh and Tak Mao are put under lockdown for 14 days from 15 April to 28 April in order to curb the spread of COVID-19. So it was the first real lockdown in the whole Phnom Penh city. 16 April, Siem Reap administration announced the lockdown of some areas in Siem Reap. Same for 2 weeks from 16 to 29 April. 17 April, the decision 50, which amends the lockdown measures in Phnom Penh and Tak Mao. Then started the identification of red zone for Phnom Penh on 19 April, followed by 22 April. Also, the Phnom Penh municipality announced that people who are living in a red zone need to be to do mandatory testing for COVID-19. 23 April, same in Sihanouk province, we identify red zone where people cannot travel outside their home, and it was prohibited also for business in these areas. And on that day, also, Sihanouk administration extended the lockdown of Sihanoukville for 14 additional days. 25 April, the royal government of Cambodia decided to end the inter-provincial travel ban. However, it do not concern Phnom Penh and Takmao, for which still travel between Phnom Penh and other provinces will still remain prohibited, because Phnom Penh still remain under lockdown at that date. Decision 54, dated 26 April, the government extended the lockdown measures in Phnom Penh and Takmao until 5 May, so until today. And on that day, they create also different color code zone, red zone, orange zone, and yellow zone. Some are also speaking, instead of orange zone, they are speaking of dark yellow. It's the same. So this applied for Phnom Penh and Takmao. And this is amended every days, depending on where there is new cases of infection. On 3rd May, the royal government announced that the lockdown in Phnom Penh and Takmao will be lifted on 6 May, so tomorrow. Indeed, from tomorrow, travel between Phnom Penh and provinces is allowed. So if you want to travel to provinces and you are based in Phnom Penh, from tomorrow you can travel. There is no motive that you need to justify. However, the color code zone will remain in place after 5 May, so from tomorrow. And the curfew hours has been announced that it has been revised. So no, it's not from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. It's from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. as from tomorrow. How it impacts the construction sectors. So the construction sector has many business sectors, has been strongly impacted by the lockdown and by the current situation. And we can identify and list down the difficulties depending on which kind of difficulties. Some are linked to health and safety, some are more financial difficulties, some are relating to the progress of works or timing, and some are more administrative difficulties. Of course, in terms of health and safety, some employees, the construction sector, have been infected by the COVID-19, similar to other elements of the private and public sector. The risk of infection concerns all workers, whatever their industry and position. So, of course, construction sector has also faced infection. We notice a lot of construction company or subcontractor who had a few cases. On 23 April 2021, it was announced that 63 construction workers were found infected of COVID-19. These workers were mostly in Kopik area. Of course, we have less infection in the construction sectors than in factories and in the garment industry because of the working condition, because most of the works are done outside, because there is more social distancing, people wear masks. So this helped to get less COVID cases, but we cannot prevent cases even in the construction sector. So the construction sector has been impacted in terms of infection. In terms of financial difficulties, of course, when you have a lockdown, it impacts also strongly the cash flow of construction companies, as all business companies. When your business is closed, of course, you have financial difficulties. This can be linked also to difficulty for employers to pay the construction companies, to pay the invoice of the construction companies. So this impacts the cash flow of the construction companies. Also, why sometimes employers have difficulties because, for example, their administrative or their financial department is closed. So it's much more difficult to pay from home, even if you can use an ABA from your home or other bank application. But also because we have difficulties to approve the work in progress or the works which has been completed. Why? Because when you have a lockdown, you cannot move and not go to the construction site, and you cannot approve the works in progress or the works which have been completed. Difficulties also for construction company to pay the wages of their employees on time. Of course, because they have an issue in terms of cash flow, because they have less payment by their clients, construction companies have difficulties to pay their own employees. Also because as for the employers, also they have also their financial department or administrative department who are working from home, and sometimes it's much more complicated to arrange for payment of employees, especially for employees in construction sector. Not all have a bank account. Financial difficulties, because when you have a lockdown, also you have additional costs. The works is extended in terms of time. There is an extension of the duration of the work, so it creates additional costs. Also, because you have a lockdown, you need to demobilize your employee and then to remobilize when the lockdown is left. And this creates additional costs for the construction companies. Also, because there is an extension of the duration of the works, you need to extend the duration of your bank performance guarantee. So generally, bank requests additional charges when the construction company asks for the extension of the bank performance guarantee. This creates additional costs for the construction companies. However, when I discuss with my clients, most of them told me that they get extension of their bank performance guarantee for free without any additional charge. But this depends on your relationship with your bank. And I highly recommend you to try to negotiate with your bank in order to have an extension of the bank performance guarantee of 1 additional month, because the lockdown was approximately 3 weeks or more. So to have an extension of your bank performance guarantee for free. Same when you need to extend the bank performance guarantee, you will need to extend also the insurance policy. Why? Because the duration of the works is longer. You need to cover for until the completion of the work, so you need to extend the insurance policies. So you need to request it, and generally also insurance companies charge additional cost. But depending on your relationship with your insurance company, I've seen that some insurance companies have accepted to extend the duration of the insurance policy without charging additional costs. But this again depends on your relationship and depend with your insurance company and depend also on the insurance company. Construction company with a high level of debt and low cash reserve may face serious liquidity issues in the near future. Difficulty linked to the progress of works or timing because of a lockdown. Some construction sites are located in a lockdown areas, like for example, during the lockdown in Phnom Penh. So the construction site is closed because it's located in a lockdown area. Also, it can be closed even if it's not located in a lockdown area, if it's outside the lockdown area, but some construction company have decided to close the construction site. Why? Because not many employees can travel to the construction site. For example, the employees are living in Phnom Penh and the construction site is outside Phnom Penh, but they cannot travel because of the lockdown measures. Also, difficulties to deliver the construction materials to the construction site because you cannot deliver the construction site because of the travel ban. This lead to the closure of some construction sites. Some construction sites were still open during the lockdown because they were allowed to pursue the work, but with a reduced number of employees on construction site. So this slowed considerably the progress of the works. Some construction projects have been authorized also to proceed their works, especially when it's linked to public work. Also, in terms of timing, its impact because of the starting of new projects. When you have a lockdown, it's much more difficult to start new projects. So new project has been delayed, and this will impact the cash flow and the work of a construction company in the near future. Also, it's much more difficult to negotiate new contracts. Some negotiations were put on hold, even if we have today Zoom or Microsoft Teams, you can organize an online meeting, but still it's sometimes difficult for parties to negotiate during this lockdown period. So some projects are being put on hold, and this will delay the starting of the project, and this will impact the cash flow of the construction company in the near future. Difficulties linked to administrative formalities. Of course, when you have a lockdown, it's much more difficult to meet the official because most of them are working from home, because you cannot travel to meet the administration, because we were on a lockdown situation. So it will create a difficulty to obtain your permit, your license, and all formalities that you need to carry out. Also, during the lockdown, it was authorized for some construction sites to pursue the works, but they need to obtain permits from the Ministry of Labor for their employees in order to allow them to travel to the construction site. But this was very difficult to obtain. So now that we have seen the different measures taken by the government, the different difficulties faced by the construction company, which measure could be taken by construction company when you are under lockdown or even after the lockdown? So as we mentioned, we have seen a massive impact on a construction project and construction company linked to the lockdown. And the legal implication will depend on the drafting of your contract. So it will vary from one contract to another contract. We'll see, first of all, the recourse against the employer if you are the main contractor, and if you are a subcontractor, your recourse against your main contractor. The recourse against the insurance companies, even if it's very low in Cambodia, and the recourse against the employees. Recourse against employer or main contractor, depending if you are a main contractor or a subcontractor. From a contractual point of view, events such as COVID-19 pandemic or lockdown are considered as unforeseen events, which generally fall into two broad categories: force majeure and change of law. So we'll review right now what is a force majeure and what is a change of law, and how it's applied to this lockdown situation. So force majeure is not expressly defined by the Cambodian Civil Code, which only refers to the rights that the party to a contract can claim due to a force majeure, such as the right of a landlessee to claim for a rent reduction, but there is no specific general definition of force majeure. The law on construction, which was promulgated on 2nd November 2019, defined force majeure as an event that happens against one will, which is unexpected and which is irresistible. So three conditions need to be fulfilled. It's cumulative condition in order to be able to claim for force majeure. The events need to be unexpected, it needs to be irresistible, and it needs to be beyond its control. So for the last condition, beyond its control, it's obvious that it's beyond any party's control, and it's something that neither the employer nor the construction company could be held responsible. They are not responsible of the lockdown. Again, the lockdown was, this community event was not linked to the construction sector or to the construction companies. We understand that it was due to two people who were traveling from abroad to Cambodia and who bring the COVID-19 virus. We can also consider that the condition relating to irresistible event is fulfilled when the construction site has been forced to close, which is the case when the government decides a lockdown. The construction site is closed, especially, for example, if your construction site is located in Phnom Penh. So we can consider that in such a case, it will be an irresistible event and that this condition is fulfilled. Because no step can be done by a construction company to avoid the lockdown or to mitigate its effect, even if the company put in place all acceptable preventive measures such as social distancing, temperature check, wearing masks. Even all these measures could not prevent the entry into force of the lockdown. The last conditions that need to be fulfilled, it's unexpected events. This condition can be challenged by employers. It's the only conditions, to my opinion, can be challenged because we can consider that COVID-19 was not unexpected for construction contract. If you have signed, for example, your construction contract in April or in December 2020, we cannot consider that at that moment it was an event which was unexpected. Because it's been already 1 year that we have a pandemic in the world. So we can consider that this kind of event and lockdown could happen even in Cambodia. However, could construction company could argue that since the beginning of the pandemic, no lockdown were implemented in Cambodia, and no one could have foreseen events such as the 20 February community incident. So this is a condition that can be argued by both parties, and which is the only condition that, to my opinion, can be challenged. Now that we have seen force majeure, we can see change of law clause. So some contracts also include provision pursuant to which construction company can request an extension of time and additional cost in case of change of law. Change of law apply generally when it's a change of law in the country where is located the construction site. So if there is a change of law in Cambodia with the lockdown and your construction site is located in Cambodia, of course, you can argue for a change of law. But if it's a change of law, for example, in Vietnam, because your parent company is Vietnamese, your foreign companies, it will be not possible to argue for this change of law in such a case. Sorry. So should force majeure be recognized? What are the consequences? The consequences will depend on how is drafted your contract. Generally, we have provision pursuant to which, in case of a force majeure event, there is a suspension of the obligation of the party under the construction contract. In some cases, the termination of the contract can be also decided, and also contractor can claim additional costs and avoidance of late delivery penalties. Also, maybe when you have a force majeure event, the employer can claim that he cannot pay because of the lockdown situation, or because of this force majeure event. It can be used also by the employers in order to avoid the payment. However, in many jurisdictions, this argument has been rejected by the courts and arbitration. Because even when you have a lockdown, banks are open and you can still proceed for a payment, even by your app, by your mobile app. So this argument for employer is much more difficult to be used. That's why it's mostly generally used by construction companies. Also, it's in order to avoid late delivery penalties, because you have an extension of the duration of works. So construction company claim for force majeure events in order to explain that there is a delay and that no late delivery penalties will apply, and to avoid these late delivery penalties. In order to claim for a force majeure event, construction company needs to notify a claim to the employer. Also, it can be to the engineer, depending how it's drafting your construction contract. And this notification need to be done on time and in the form and addressed to the person as agreed under the condition of your construction contract. Failing to deliver on time and in the form agreed in your construction contract, your employer can refuse this claim and can consider that even if there is a force majeure event, because you do not notify it on time, you cannot claim it. So if you haven't, if you're a construction company and you haven't yet notified a claim, please do it quickly in order to avoid a refusal from your employer or from the engineer. Construction company which notify a claim on time can ask for an extension of time for the avoidance of the application of late delivery penalty and for the payment of additional costs, as we explained, because we have additional costs for construction company linked to the demobilization, remobilization of the employee, extension of the bank performance guarantee, extension of the insurance policy, or also because of a lockdown, we can see sometimes an increase of the construction material price. So because of all this, construction company can claim the payment of additional costs. What are the recourse under FIDIC contract? I refer to the FIDIC contract because it's a common contract which is commonly used in Cambodia. And I refer to the Red Book edition 1999, which is the most common version used in Cambodia. However, if you use a different FIDIC contract, FIDIC book, or different edition, please double check, because the references may change or the content may change depending on which edition you use or which book you use. So under the FIDIC Red Book edition 1999, we have three claims that can be done, that can be made. Article 8.4 for extension of time, Article 19.1 relating to force majeure, and Article 13.7 relating to adjustment for changing legislation. So Article 8.4 relating to extension of time refers to two events for which contractor can claim an extension of time. So the first one is an unforeseeable shortage in the availability of personnel or goods caused by the epidemic or governmental action. So the lockdown is due to the epidemic. It's a governmental action. So of course you have a shortage in the availability of your employees or goods. So you can claim under this provision an extension of time. Same, the second one, the cause of delay is giving an entitlement to an extension of time under the subclause of this condition. It refers to Article 8.5 relating to delay caused by the authorities, pursuant to which the following condition needs to be fulfilled. So it's a delay linked to the authorities, which is caused by the authorities. First, the contractor has diligently followed the procedure of the authority. This authority delay or disrupt the contractor work, and the delay or the disruption was unforeseeable. So same than as we explained, we can understand that these conditions are fulfilled in case of a lockdown in Cambodia. The only one which can be challenged is unforeseeable events. Article 19.1 relating to force majeure under COVID, under FIDIC Red Book. So Article 19.1 defines force majeure as an event which is beyond the party control, so same as the construction law, which such party could not reasonably have provided against before entering into a contract. Again, you cannot do any measure in order to prevent a lockdown, which having arise, such party could not be reasonably have avoided or overcome, and which is not substantially attributable to the other party. Article 13.7 refers to the change of legislation. So it's an adjustment for changing legislation. In such a case, it requires a change of law, which affects the performance of the contractor's obligation under the contract, which is the case when you have a lockdown, it impacts the performance of your obligation. In such a case, a notice needs to be sent to the contractor or to the engineer. Under the FIDIC Red Book, it's to the engineer, in order to request an extension of time if the completion is delayed and the payment of additional costs. To the best of our knowledge, we are not aware of any court decision in Cambodia relating to a similar case to a lockdown. First of all, because the lockdown is quite new, so we didn't have time to go to the court or to arbitration. Maybe in the near future, we'll have a court decision, but at the moment, there is no court decision relating to the lockdown. So we don't know how it will be interpreted by the judge or arbitrator. And as I explained, it will be also depending on the discretion of the judge or arbitrator. And it will depend also when you have signed your construction contract and if the lockdown has been implemented or not. So for example, if your construction site is in Phnom Penh, it will be much more easier to claim for force majeure than if it's in an area where you don't have any lockdown, like for example, Rattanakkiri. Also, it will depend on the drafting of your force majeure clause. So please double check what provision is mentioned in your contract. Also, when you refer to FIDIC contract, please keep in mind that what I have explained is relating to the general condition of the FIDIC contract, but the general condition can be amended by your particular condition. So please double check what is mentioned in your specific FIDIC contract because the provision provided in your general conditions that I have explained can be changed or amended by your particular condition. Now that we have seen the recourse against the employer, what are the recourse against the insurance companies? Construction company must review their insurance policies, and in particular, if they have taken out a business interruption insurance policy in order to cover the loss of the construction company linked to the lockdown. In case of a business interruption insurance, some companies cover the risk of a pandemic. It was a case in, for example, for AXA or for Groupama, and some decision has been already pronounced, especially in France, but it can be the case also in other countries. So various decisions sentence the insurer to indemnify the insured party. Mostly in France, it was linked to a restaurant owner or to a hotel operator, because this business activity were under lockdown during a long period, while the construction company have been authorized to pursue their works. That's why we haven't noticed yet any case relating to construction company. But again, it would depend on the drafting of your insurance policy and of the circumstance that you submit to the court. So please double check. And also you ask for a case of force majeure, that when you notify it to your employer, you need also to notify it on time and in the form agreed in your insurance policies. It needs to be notified on time and in the form to the insurance company and broker. So if you haven't done it, please do it quickly, because if not, insurance company could reject your claim, even if it was a risk which was covered by your insurance policy. Know that we have seen the recourse against insurer. You have also your recourse against the employees. So there was a specific instruction during the lockdown, which was issued by the Ministry of Labor and Vocational Training, instruction 43/21, which is dated 19 April 21, pursuant to which the Ministry of Labor reminding that company whose activity has been suspended during the lockdown, which is a case of a construction company, that they must maintain the position and seniority of their employee during the lockdown, pay the wages for early April. So it's for the 2 weeks of early April, of the beginning of April, which is a period prior to the lockdown. So of course, during the period before the lockdown, all the employers need to pay for their employees because they have worked during this period, and the payments need to be done after the lockdown ends. So the lockdown ends tonight. So from tomorrow, if you haven't paid your employees for the first 2 weeks of April, please do it because you need to do it according to this instruction 43/21. Same, this instruction refer to additional allowance that employers can pay to their employees based on their humanity and solidarity, in order to help their employees who are in difficulties during this lockdown period. Construction company can also suspend the employment contract during a lockdown because the employees cannot perform any work during this lockdown. And as this instruction is silent on the payment of wages to employees during this lockdown, we can understand that employer can decide to suspend the employment contract of the employee during the lockdown. Article 72 of the labor law does not require an employer to pay wages during a suspension period unless the law states or the employer agree otherwise. Because the law do not provide any specific provision to maintain and not to suspend the employment contract during the lockdown, we can consider, based on this Article 72, and on this instruction, that during the lockdown, employer can suspend the employment contract of their employees. Also, some construction companies have decided not to suspend their employment contract of their employee, but to request them to take some leave, some holiday during this lockdown in order to mitigate the impact for the construction company. That's all for me. I will give the floor now to the audience for your question. Thanks everyone for listening for this presentation.
Okay, thank you, Charles. So thank you for the presentations, and I think it's very insightful. So I think I can share with you the first question Noe has shared with me from the audience. So quickly to our audience, in case I would like to mention again, you can ask question using the Q&A box at the bottom, and then our team will try our best to answer your questions. So the first question comes from, so construction material prices have increased during the pandemics. So what is your view on the price hike and how did it affect the construction sector in Cambodia? I think this question can be answered by Michel.
Yes, I was about to. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Charles, for this presentation. It's very very good information on what happened during this lockdown and what can our members do to mitigate the risk. Regarding the construction material price, maybe some during this lockdown took opportunities to raise the price because of difficulties for the delivery. But we haven't really seen that much happen on our construction site because most of our construction sites were locked. So we didn't see really that. What we can say is like the price of construction material increase about, depends which one, but between 10 to 20% from last year. And this is what we have witnessed here in Cambodia is mainly due to two factors. The first one is the price of steel, which has increased everywhere, especially in China. And then the second one is the cost of shipping the materials and exporting. So that's had an impact on material price here in Cambodia. For the one manufactured here, of course, they were dependent to the some import raw materials. So some of them has been also impacted on that one. But we didn't see a specific increase during this lockdown, or maybe some who took opportunities to good business, but that's it. Nothing much. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. So I have a second question. So do you have any views on the measures that companies can implement towards employees to face the financial difficulties due to the lockdown? And secondly, what is your suggestion for construction companies? How can they survive?
So how they can survive? Again, they can use the recourse that I have mentioned during my presentation. So to claim for extension of time, first of all, to avoid late delivery penalties, claim for additional costs to the employers, but based on the drafting of your construction contract.
Okay, right.
And know that the lockdown is over from tomorrow, so to restart quickly the works in order to mitigate the effects. And we hope that we will not face new cases. Again, even if the lockdown is over from tonight, I know that some construction sites will remain closed because the works will be delayed. Why? Because they have some construction company have some of their employees who are still located in a red zone area, so they still cannot travel to the construction site. So even if the lockdown is over from tonight, the impact will still remain for a lot of construction projects and construction companies. Okay. And that's why it's really important to claim on time relating to the different recourse that you can have.
Michel. So I think for the third questions we have, so how common are the FedEx contract in Cambodia? And do you have an estimate percentage from your practice?
Percentage of what? Of people who sign a FedEx contract?
Yeah, FedEx contract.
It's really depending. I cannot give a percentage because it's really depending on the nature of the project. I will say that for the most sophisticated project and the biggest project, generally people use a FedEx contract, but for smaller projects, they rarely use a FedEx contract. So it will really depend on the project. It will depend also of the quality of the parties. Some are also very familiar to FedEx, and that's why they are happy to use FedEx because they are familiar with this kind of contract, while others prefer to use their own template because they have been drafted by their lawyer or by their legal team, and they prefer to use their own template of contract.
Right.
So it's really depending on the parties. And again, even if you have signed under a FedEx contract, it will depend also on the particular conditions that you will sign. So because by the particular condition, you can amend the general condition of the FIDIC contract. So even if you sign a FIDIC contract, at the end, it can be fully different from a FIDIC contract depending on the particular conditions that you will sign.
Okay, so I'm scanning through. So we have another question. So do you think it is acceptable for clients or projects owner to use COVID-19 as an excuse to delay their payment, and how to respond and deal with common late payment excuses? What is your view on this?
Again, as I explained during my presentation, it would depend on the drafting of your contract. It would depend where is situated your construction site. Of course, if your construction site is in a lockdown area, it's much more easier to claim for a case of force majeure than if it's in an area which is not under lockdown. Also, it would depend on the date of signature of your contract. So really, you need to have a real study of your specific case. But again, as I explained, we have a legal ground, and in some cases, to my opinion, we can consider that a force majeure event is there because of the lockdown. But really, it would depend on your specific condition. And if you are on the shoes of the employer, they will always try to refuse a force majeure in order not to pay for additional costs. So it will also depend on your relationship with the employer, because who will bear the cost of the extension of time? It will be the construction company or the employer. So it will really depend on the drafting of your contract, on your claim. Also, if you have notified your claim on time, you can have a claim. But if you don't notify your claim on time, because, for example, you have just 10 days to notify your claim, and this 10 days has already expired, then you cannot claim, even if the case of force majeure was there. Maybe, Michel, you want to add something?
Yes, this is basically what we advise to our members and the audience today is activate this force majeure anyway. You can open for discussion, open for negotiation later on to measure the impact, but open the debate. That's what we'll advise to do.
Yeah, it's what I advise also to all my clients. We notify quickly when we have the first announcement from the government. The next day we notify the claim in order to again to comply with the condition of their construction contract. But we know that it will be debated later on. But at least you avoid the late delivery penalties.
Okay, thank you, Charles and Michel. So. I mean, specifically, I mean, you can answer this. If not, do you have any tips for negotiating a solution in the construction sectors?
Tips. Well, I think case by case. It depends how you have dealt with your employees. If they took annual leave during that time, and then they can go back to work. So the impact on the construction company will not be big. So you can negotiate mitigation measure with the client. Honestly, on 6 construction sites we have, clients understand, contractors understand, we open, we have meetings, we try to see what we can do, measure the effect, measure the impacts in terms of completion and financial impact also. And we try to find the best solution for the project and for everyone. I think discuss and open the discussion and discuss with all the parties.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So
I see also one question from David Kong.
Sure. If you see any question that you would like to answer, please.
I will answer. So I don't know if you can read the question.
Okay. From who? I'm sorry. David Kong. Okay. So from David Kong, if there's no clause stated in the contract regarding the lockdown, what should be the best ground for the contractor to delay the construction due to this situation without any penalty?
So this may be the case for some of you who don't have a very detailed contract. For example, they don't have signed a FIDI contract and they don't have a very detailed contract and they don't have any provision relating to pandemic or to force majeure under their construction contract. So in such a case, construction law will apply, which define force majeure event, and you can claim, again, even if there is no specific provision under your contract, you can claim based on this construction law. So again, do not forget to send a notice to your employer or to the engineer or to the architect or project manager to notify the claim. Depending so on the drafting of your contract, it will be based on your contract, or if it will be based on the construction law.
Okay.
That's why in the presentation I have tried to explain the different cases.
Okay. I have a question for Michel. So, do you have any specific platform to meet new contractors and new suppliers to boost the business in this pandemic?
Platform for what, sorry?
A platform to meet new contractors and new suppliers to boost their business.
I think the Cambodian Construction Association, they have a registry. You can go to their website and they list contractors, suppliers. So that's the only one really we know, which is quite exhaustive. But no, there is not such a platform like that in Cambodia, except for this construction, the CCA, Cambodia Construction Association.
Associations. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think we answered a lot of questions already. So if you allow me to ask one more. So going back to probably it's you have already stated in your presentation. So if in case there's no clause stated in a contract regarding the lockdown, what should be the best ground for the contractor to delay the construction due to this situation without any penalty?
Can you repeat? Sorry.
So if there's no clause stated in the contract regarding the lockdown, what should be the best ground for contractor to delay the constructions?
In such a case, I would recommend to use a construction law. As I mentioned, it will be the best legal ground. If there is no specific provision under your construction contract, you can refer to the construction law, which refer expressly to the force majeure events.
Okay. Thank you. I think I have covered most of the question already, but in case Charles, Michel, you have anything to add, especially for Michel, you want to add more to the point that previously mentioned?
No, maybe just something that might happen on for some of our members on construction site is the damage caused by the stoppage of the work. Basically because of rain or because there's no staff to go to the site. One, I don't know how to what is the procedure for that and how to define the responsibility. What we face is not that yet. Is that because we haven't come back to site yet? Is the safety? Safety for us was a major concern during lockdown, because even if most of our site could not reach the construction site, neighbors could, and thefts or things like that. So we will measure also that after the lockdown is lifted.
Thank you.
I see also a question of Stéphane Bigor. In case of both clause force majeure and change of law are applicable in a specific contract, which one will prevail? So in such a case, there is no one provision who prevail on the other. Both are applicable and have the same value. So you can use either one or either the other, or you can try to use both. Depending, again, you will check which conditions are fulfilled, because again, under force majeure or change of law, you have specific conditions that you need to fulfill in order to be able to claim based on this grant. And the ones that your specific case is fulfilled, you can use it. But there is not one who prevails on the other.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. So, Charles, you have anything else to add on the point you have raised before regarding it? Okay. All right. So I think we have covered most of the questions, and if you don't have anything else to mention, I think we can close the Q&A session now.
Yeah.
Okay. So if there is no more question, just to inform a little bit our members and the non-members, because I saw in some of the chat there were people asked the question about what happened to the tall building forum. So we will do it. We will take a decision probably mid of June to decide of the date. So it depends obviously of how this pandemic is evolving in Cambodia or not. But it's prepared anyway. So hopefully it will be done maybe this summer. But we will communicate on that in the near future. Also to update on the activities of the Ministry of Construction regarding the certification. We have many questions from developers asking how to implement this certification process that was voted in the PRACA in the 30th of December. We know now that the ministry is working on 2 new PRACA, one to establish the content on those certifications, and the other one to regulate the fees. So they're working on that. We hope to get those PRACAs soon, to have a draft soon. That might be submitted also to our committee for review and comment. So hopefully we will get at the end of Q2 a better understanding of how to apply this certification process. Maybe you want to add something on that, Charles, or not?
No, I think it's perfectly clear. We know that the ministry are working on various sub-decree and PRACAs that they expect to release this year. Of course, their calendar has been changed with the COVID situation and the lockdown. But again, it's only postponed, it's not cancelled. So it will be released later on this year. And as you explained, Michel, for the Tall Building Forum, yes, we really want to organize it. We have only postponed it and not cancel it. And again, we will try also to organize other webinar, and when the situation is better in Cambodia, to organize a breakfast talk, if we can.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Michel. So before I jump to the closing remarks, please, if you allow me to mention a bit about EuroChams. So we'd like to remind that the CSR contest and awards has been extended until the 19th of May. So for corporate company or youth-led organization who is interested can still be applied to this contest. So EuroCham has always been open our doors to corporate company or individual who would like to become part of our members. So feel free to drop us an email to info@EuroChams. Should you would like to know more about the EuroCham membership programs, how to be part of advocacy, just like this one for real estate and constructions. So we have providing different services ranging from advisory to supporting services. So join our newest members. And I would like to also thanks to our platinum partners, Bread Bank, DFDL, and Talliers, and gold partners, Smart, Sofitel, Total, Mercedes, Glue Ups, Hobbs Garden, and Honeycomb Cambodia for supporting EuroChams this year and making our activities possible. So without any delay, so I would like to invite my colleagues, Mr. Noe, to give a closing remark for this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ratanak, and thank you, Charles and Michel, and all participants for engaging in this interesting discussion today. By way of closing remarks, I will just share with you some of the thoughts that came to my mind during the webinar and which I tried to note down. Construction is obviously a sector which, on the one hand, is sensitive to economic cycles. But on the other hand, I think it can also be a big driver itself behind the course of economic cycles. Construction, it essentially means transforming basic raw materials quite quickly into capital assets, which are essential for economic activity and also for the delivery, of course, of infrastructure services. Now, as we can see, for example, in the United States, governments worldwide, they are going back to their old recipes to try to boost the post-pandemic economy by state funding of large infrastructure projects. This was obviously not the main topic of the webinar, but still I think it's worthwhile to consider if massive public funding of infrastructure projects would be a good booster for the Cambodian economy at this time. If you look at Keynes' economic theory, which is really the foundation for such stimulus spending, you would require an economic recession, first of all, and secondly, a large unemployment to make such public spending really a necessary measure. Now, currently, if you look at the figures, the Cambodian economy doesn't really seem to be massively slowing down. The Asian Development Bank still projects about 4% economic growth in 21 and 5.5% in 22 for Cambodia. So that is the first thing. And secondly, the unemployment rate, well, assessing the unemployment rate in Cambodia is of course a different kettle of fish due to the size of the informal economy. But historically, the unemployment rate in Cambodia is low and it's really well below 1%. I've seen some figures in the past weeks assessing that unemployment rate for Cambodia in 2021 at above 2%. But anyway, if you compare it to the US, it still remains low in absolute numbers. The US has about 9% unemployment. So do we require really a USA or a Keynes-style stimulus in Cambodia, really focusing on public infrastructure funding to provide an answer to the Cambodian COVID crisis and to get back on our feet again? I think from an economic perspective, most likely not, as those two key factors being a strong economic decline and a large unemployment, they are currently not present in the hard figures. Could such spending help us to get back and better on track? Yeah, of course. But then it's more a question of political priorities rather than purely an economic stimulus question. And as there is a large infrastructure gap that Cambodia needs to address anyway, this of course could be an opportunity to get ahead in the race again. But again, this is then more a question of political priorities and where we as a chamber obviously also try to weigh in to the benefit of our members. And obviously the tourism and the hospitality sector is suffering tremendously right now, and they are one of the many sectors that could benefit from a further improved infrastructure. Now, my apologies because I drifted away a bit from the topic of the webinar, but my idea really is to illustrate that the construction sector has many different angles and questions to it that we have to consider. It is not only about the state of the retail property sector or the commercial building market, etc. It is also really about those large questions, as construction is at the center of the country's future and the direction that it wants to take. And as I mentioned in the beginning of my remarks, construction and real estate is a sector which is sensitive to economic cycles, but it can also drive the course of a new economic cycle. And in addition, I think it's important to note that construction can have a huge societal impact as well. Construction is still a labor-intensive sector that generates jobs for a large number of people. In Cambodia alone, there are more than 200,000 construction workers that we know of. So if a country addresses the labor conditions of construction workers, their social and healthcare protection, their occupational safety and health conditions, that country is really addressing the living and working conditions for an important part of its population. And secondly, to give you another example, according to estimates of the UN Environment Programme and also the International Energy Agency, the CO2 CO2 emissions from the construction sector, they represent nearly 40% of the global energy and process-related emissions. So if a country focuses on energy and environmentally efficient building, it is seriously addressing also one of our time's crucial issues. So in short, the construction sector, it really defines how we live and how we work, both literally and figuratively speaking. And I think luckily COVID-19 is not only doom and gloom if we consider the bigger picture. For example, COVID-19 has really accelerated the digitalization of the construction sector. For example, the building information modeling, BIM, which is one of the key features of what they call the construction 4.0, it has clearly been used more widely worldwide during lockdowns because it allows projects to continue in the digital space. And also the trend for prefabrication of building components, I think we can say it has been further picking up some pace worldwide. So on the one hand, you have the controlled factory settings, which are much easier to manage, but those prefabricated components, of course, they also require minimal labor to install on site, which can be an important consideration in the context of social distancing and of lockdowns. So let me close here with these small positive notes, I hope, from my side. And of course, by saying thanks to all of you. We hope this webinar has answered some practical concerns that you may have, but we also hope it has given you some food for thought, and in particular, also some appetite to join us in weighing in on the debate. The debate on the one hand, how we deal with really the immediate hardships of this crisis, but also how we want this country to look like in 5 and 10 years from now. So again, also from my side, an invitation to join our warm and safe family of entrepreneurs at EuroCham by becoming a member of our chamber, and of course, to get on board of our committees where you will meet wonderful people like Charles and Michel, and of course also myself. So have a nice evening and stay safe. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noah. So once again, thank you to our speakers, Charles, Michel, and Denis. So I think we has concluded the webinars. So thank you everyone for joining today's webinar session at EuroCham. So we will soon announce for the upcoming webinar sessions, and then we will keep everyone posted on activities. So thank you, and have a nice evening.